tell us, Doctor, what were your expectations of the Inter-Korean summit before the start? And in mind, were they met at all today?
Because, this was another summit meeting in 11 years, and there was a very expectation running pretty high, even though there are some people, conservative people particularly, have some reservation because we had the lessons learned in the past. Because in the past, we signed a very beautifully sounding documents several times. A promise made, a promise broken again, an agreement made again and broken again. So this kind of repetition of failures on the part of North Korea to comply and implement all the agreements they reached, this is a tremendous burden on us. That's why we had some legitimate concern even before the start of yesterday's meeting. As it turned out, we are a little bit happy because everything turned out just okay. Everything went fine, as best as possible. So it went pretty good, much better than we expected. I think the mood is pretty positive here in Korea, and because we understand after these two leaders made a great efforts to make a perfect day, one day, like 12 hours altogether, being started in the morning and until the end of the day. So it is a perfect show kind of performance, but it really symbolizes a true age of a kind of peace and prosperity and unification. One thing that I noticed is in the previous years, we were talking about the unification. Sure. But this time we began with the peace and co-prosperity and unification. I think this is very realistic. This is the order of the three words: peace, reconciliation, the co-prosperity and unification, really symbolize the priorities these two governments in the North and South have put on this time. Not with the beginning with the unification, but beginning with the peace. I think this is a very realistic kind of understanding of the situation we are right now, and the way we're going to from now on. I think this is a very realistic. If you look at these particular wording on the documents: peace, co-prosperity, prosperity, and then unification. And also, I'm going to talk to you later, but also about the denuclearization. I think they made a very tremendous advance because we are really worried because North Korea will not give up its nuclear weapons. But I think thanks to Mr. Trump's efforts, because if you really give up this going to nuclear weapons, we'll give this and this as concession, including the opening of embassies in both capitals and finally sizing a kind of normal relation between the two countries. So with this kind of guarantees provided by Washington and also by South Korea, Kim Jong-un was a little bit certain that it's better for me to choose this path rather than the other way around. I think for both leaders, it was a great day, and I think for the entire people in the world, it was a very good day, a good start for a new year.
Okay, so a good day. Let's go back to that day. We're going to begin our extended highlights of the summit, and we want you to help us walk through it. Now, we begin with President Moon Jae-in setting off from the Blue House at around 8 a.m. to head off to Panmunjom. Now, we heard at this point that Kim Jong-un had already left Pyongyang, as the North Korean capital is much further from the inter-Korean border. Now, as they're seeing the pictures here, this was the morning of the summit, and President Moon Jae-in coming out of the Blue House. Now, in his motorcade, we weren't sure which car he was in, but then he got out at one point to greet the passing civilians who are cheering him on as his way to Panmunjom. Now, at this point, what do you think he was feeling, Doctor?
One of the things that I take notice is on his first stop, just 2 blocks from the Cheongwade, they were not just Koreans, they are very patriotic, conservative Koreans. But actually they're delivering the best wishes for a successful summit meeting. So this was very, because I didn't look at the first time. But.
Oh, now, this was the pictures of Kim Jong-un stepping out from the Tongilgak pavilion. Now, we're at the media press center when this happened, and there were audible gasps from the reporters when we saw this. Now, this is the moment that we had all been waiting for, an incredible, cordial and very natural handshake between the two leaders. I'm sure the two sides would have been very nervous at this point, but it didn't show too much. All smiles, friendly gestures. And then he stepped over, historic moment, Kim Jong-un stepping over onto the south side of the border, the first North Korean leader to step on South Korean soil in 65 years. And then the first unscripted moment of the day, as Kim stepped over the military demarcation line, we were later told that Moon jokingly asked when he would be able to visit the north, and Kim told him, why don't we go right now, and offered Moon to step over onto the northern side. Now, I think that is one of the most iconic moments of the summit, the two leaders holding hands, crossing over the North Korean border. What do you think, Professor?
I totally agree with you, but this is a very similar moment for our two countries because there was a kind of invisible kind of wall. It's not the bully wall, but it's invisible MBA wall. But their intention trying to break this wall by crossing that the wall, both north and south. I think this is a historical moment, and it carries a significant political symbol.
Sure, it was very unscripted, but the fact they were showing it's a simple step over the line. You know, it's this border. It seems sometimes so difficult to cross, so difficult to deal with, and then they just stepped over like it was nothing.
Yeah, that's right, because it really signified that it just takes 10 seconds to cross the border. But as we used to spend several hours to fly back to China, and then so this is a great moment that we're going to shorten our distance just by crossing this line, just 10 minutes, 10 seconds rather.
Now they've got into the Peace House, as we're seeing in the footage, and here they're about to start the official summit meeting. Now, it was, again, very friendly, lots of smiles, lots of handshakes, very good atmospherics, they say. And then before they sit down, they were looking at before they sat down, actually, Kim Jong-un joked with President Moon Jae-in that maybe he could come to South Korea at some point, maybe come to Seoul. That was another historic moment. And now we get to the actual summit meeting itself, where Kim Jong-un, we actually heard him speak properly for the first time live on South Korean TV. I think one of the points that we noticed at this point was he was quite funny. He had a sense of humor that we weren't really aware of at this point. I mean, what do you think?
I agree. It's not funny, but he has a sense of humor. I think this is a typical North Korean way of speaking because my family is from North Korea. I'm very familiar with this type of speaking because South Koreans, over the last 50 years, we developed a very different style of talking. But he's a very, very genuine, old-style Korean speaker. So we feel kind of familiar with his style because he seems very solemn, very trustworthy, rather than very speedy and very light-wordy. So his style is because people maybe have developed kind of favor for this style because this was part of Korea like 50, 70 years ago. We have not known much about the North Koreans' way of life, even the speaking of their leaders. So this is the first time, and he was very pretty much flexible to any situation because he's never been to this part of Seoul, Korea. But he was, I think, for his first encounter, he did much better than we expected, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
He seemed very natural.
That's right.
And the meeting lasted about 100 minutes. And this was actually probably the main meeting because in the afternoon, the meeting was very short. It just seemed in the morning, that was when they made all the big decisions, all the final details for the declaration. Now, after the meeting finished, at around noon, we just saw Kim Jong-un coming out of the Peace House, getting into his car, into his motorcade, and he turned back to the north, where the two leaders and the two delegations held lunch separately for the next few hours. Now, at this scene here, we saw Kim leave with his security personnel. Now, this was not something we knew what was going to happen, but it was quite a funny scene at this point. I was at the press center when this happened, and the reporters laughed a little bit at how
this is
hard
something we should have expected because every head of the house have this kind of security guards around him whenever they move in the United States, UK, everywhere, even in South Korea. So depending on your own experience, I think this is not new to me because that's quite natural.
Now, after an extended lunch break, the two leaders came back at 4:30 p.m. to take part in a ceremonial tree planting. Now, the pine tree is a traditional symbol for peace and prosperity, and they used soil and water from the two Koreas to plant this tree. Now, this was all part of like the theater of this summit. How important is this kind of symbolic gestures?
Because the year of the tree, but because I understand it was germinated in 1953.
Sure, it was sown
and we are
at the end
celebrating
of,
the 65th anniversary of the Armistice Agreement in July 27th. So this really symbolized that we have been in the Armistice for the last 65 years. Now we are about to enter a new era, Tory era. So that's why they intentionally planted this tree, which is 65 years old, and they just added soil from both countries and water from two very basic rivers in both capitals. I think another symbolic scenes.
So at this point, this was just after 4:30, about 4:45 p.m. The two leaders did a stroll towards the footbridge in Panmunjom. And this was a chance for the two leaders to have a one-on-one discussion without cameras, well, not without cameras which can hear them, and without other officials hearing what they were saying. Now, this conversation lasted for about 30 minutes. And the people who were watching, it was very tense, very interesting 30 minutes. I mean, to be a fly on that bridge to listen to what they were saying. I mean, what do you think of this moment?
I think this is the climax of yesterday's 12-hour performance, rather, because this is a really true, genuine talks between the two leaders. Nobody unattended, unaccompanied. And by the way, Mr. Kim was facing the camera far away. I think it's difficult because many experts believe we can just tell what he was saying by looking at his lips. We can read his lips. So I think we can have a basic idea what he was really trying to say and whether we can really confirm his genuine resolve to really comply with the denuclearization. I think this is the climax of yesterday's meeting between two leaders. I think this is a historic moment for it. I think this will definitely broadcast all over the world again and again and again because just two leaders and just lasting 32 minutes, much longer than we expected, by the way. I think this is the only way that the two leaders really can confirm whether they have real intention to give up its nuclear weapons and whether they were going to provide a security guarantee for the North Korean regime. So this is the climax, the highlight of all the process yesterday that we have seen yesterday.